I was hoping the best for her.
Hello, hello, hello. We
Good
are
morning.
we are officially live as I edit our destinations because apparently now you have to have a premium Twitter or what used to be Twitter account for it to stream there now. And I'm like, well, just remove it from there. We are not worried about that.
No, yeah.
But we are live. We're going to be talking about the Mandela effect today, which Richie, you sent me quite a bit of notes and examples. Um, one
Yeah,
or two of
there's a lot.
the things that are like personal experiences for you. So,
Yeah.
but I think the one that I always run into, and like, no, I swear that this movie was that Sinbad movie that suddenly never, ever, ever happened.
Right. Yeah. So that one is nuts. So just a quick um guys definition here for you. Because I didn't know the actual definition of the Mandela effect. Like I knew obviously what it was, like the idea, but the definition of the Mandela effect is a situation where a mass amount of people have basically a false memory of some kind. They believe an event took place that didn't. Um, the phrase was coined by Fiona Broome in 2009 after she found out that Nelson Mandela died in 2013 as opposed to the mass memory of him dying in prison in the 80s.
Hmm.
Okay, so as for that one, I remember learning in school that he died in prison.
I don't remember where I learned, and I say that because time when he died, but I do recall when he really did actually die. It was like I didn't think he was alive anymore. Like, what do you mean he just now died?
Yeah,
Um,
and that's the wild thing because it's like, I remember specifically learning in school that he died in the 80s, but it's like, how can I remember learning about his death in school when he died a year after I graduated?
yeah, and
So,
the author of that title, that paranormal researcher, she's like, I remember the widow's speech and the riots.
yes,
And I vaguely remember like the riots and the uproar. Like his death was no small thing.
right.
Um, but
I mean, yeah, that man was a big deal. So it's like, it's he was a big deal. So it's like, how in the world does everybody forget, you know, when he like, or how did everybody misremember his death?
right,
Like,
thanks, guys. He was like, glad you're back. Thanks, thanks, thanks. Less running around at least this week. We'll see.
yeah,
Um, but feel free to share in the chat, guys, any Mandela
but
effects that you personally experience.
yeah.
Um,
But going back, so let's go back to where we started because I kind of ignored what you said about the Sinbad movie to give the definition.
mhm.
Full intentions of coming back to that. Um, so yeah, the Sinbad movie. So it's like so many people say it didn't happen, including Sinbad. Sinbad said that he never played in a movie where he played a genie. And for me, I'm over here like, okay, then you're not the Sinbad from like this dimension because the Sinbad I grew up with, or the Sinbad from this timeline, however that works. The Sinbad I grew up with played a genie in
Mhm.
Shazam, and then Shaq played this genie in Kazam as a sequel. Like I know both movies exist, and there are people who still have a VHS version of the Sinbad movie, and a few of them have played some of the movie and recorded it like on their phones and stuff and put it on the internet where you can actually see that they're playing the movie.
Right.
And inside the movie, there are other Mandela effects, like the Berenstein Bears. Um, there's Curious George. Now, apparently, he's never had a tail, which doesn't make sense to me. I always remembered him having a tail because he's a monkey. But apparently, he never had a tail. But in that movie, there is a poster of Curious George with a tail. And then, like the Monopoly Man, he never had a monocle. But I specifically remember a monocle. I don't think many people are apt to forget the game that has broken many families up and has caused a lot of fights amongst families.
Yeah, like I remember the monocle. Um,
Yeah,
Not so much Curious George. I was never a Curious George fan as a kid to pay attention, but
yeah,
Monopoly, like there was a monocle. Damn it.
yeah, 100%. And there, someone, one of the people that I was watching that was, well, almost everybody who brings up the monocle thing, to like, maybe it's possible that we got him confused with another um, character who wears a top hat, being like the peanut guy. And I'm like, no, we didn't get him confused. He had a monocle.
Right.
Like, we can, I think we know the difference between peanuts and Monopoly.
Now, one of the ones that I think was one of the first cases of the Mandela effect with for me, and I don't know if you've got it in your list, but the Fruit of the Loom logo with or without
Yes,
the cornucopia, and I'm like, it was there. It was
yes,
there. It was there, and they're like, no, it wasn't. Like,
that is on my list. Absolutely. That one's crazy to me. What kills me about this is, so you look up the logo, and a lot of times when you've got a company that's been around that long, they'll have like their chart, like this was our logos throughout the years, like as every time we changed, and like this is what it was. So none of them shows the cornucopia, and the Fruit of the Loom, they swear they never had the cornucopia. Okay, that's fine. But then how are people pulling out pieces of clothing with the cornucopia on it and sharing pictures of it? Here's proof that it had a cornucopia. How can they possibly deny that? I mean, they're going to sit here. Some of them have said, I think they said that those are some kind of like off brand or a mock up or something. And I'm like, no, we all remember the cornucopia. Like, don't try to play us. Like, that is the best brand out there. So, like, we know what is on it, or at least the most popular brand at any rate. So, yeah, that one, it's crazy to me when big companies like that say this never happened. And I'm like, I know that it happened. Like, and there's a lot, it's like, I don't understand how people really don't believe that this exists as a phenomenon, because you can't possibly you can't possibly explain people, like half the world believing one thing, half the world believing something. Volkswagen. So there is debate as to what. So sorry, a lot of people remember there either being a space or not being a space in their logo, and apparently, I believe there is a space in the logo. Now, this one I really am not too sure about because I never really pay attention to that. But I believe now there's a space in the logo, but a lot of people remember there not being. But according to, once again, the same issue as with Fruit of the Loom, Volkswagen said that there's always been, whichever way it goes, there's always either been a space or not been a space. Now, for that, I don't personally know, but when I was looking at the pictures, I'm like, I can kind of remember it both ways because both of them look right. It's not one of those
I
things where it's so far off where I can't, where I'm looking at one or the other and like, that just doesn't look right. I don't, I like really, really do not remember that. It was like, that could be right, but I'm not a car person, so I don't really care.
I put into the chat, excuse me, a link of a page that I found of like 54 most common Mandela effects. And as I'm scrolling here, part of me wants to call BS and go find my copy of Silence of the Lambs. Because Hannibal Lecter is one of my most favorite literary villains. But apparently, like we all, right, remember him saying hello, Clarice, one of the first times she meets him through the bars. And apparently, they're saying he never said that. What he says is good morning. They don't even sound similar.
Yeah, so that I can't say because I don't watch movies like that, but like as for the book, because there's going to be several things in this list where it differs from books to movies as well. But like, I don't know, they were talking about specifically like a movie, and they played the scene that they're talking about, and he said good morning, and I'm like, but I don't know anything about this movie, and even I know he said hello.
Yeah, I'm going to mute myself real quick while you're talking, and I'm going to go look on YouTube because no,
Right.
you will not change my Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, it's insane. Like I think they said he said it in the sequel, but he never said it in the original. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Not even to me. So, and like I said, I know nothing about that movie whatsoever. But like that line is quoted, it's one of the most quoted lines ever when you're trying to creep somebody out because let's face it, it's creepy as hell. I mean, whether he said hello or whether he said good morning is creepy as hell either way, but hello is just a lot creepier and it's more generalized. Like somebody said that that the reason we hear hello is because it's such a general term, like it can apply to any time of day. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't sound right. That sounds like you're trying to find an excuse for why we're all misremembering something that, or supposedly misremembering something. Like some of the theories as to why we misremember some of these things is such a stretch. I'm like, you want to go ahead and pull that arm back a little bit because you're stretching a little too far. You're going to hurt yourself.
Okay. So, damn it. He does very quietly just say, good morning. And then she starts talking. So, there's got to be somewhere else in the movie where he says, probably on another meeting when she goes to visit him, but he does say hello, Clarice, at some point.
I'm sure he does. I mean, you would not hear me argue that. Like I said, I've never watched it. I never watched it before the Mandela effect would have taken place. So, like, if I were to watch it now, of course, I would hear the hello or the good morning and not the hello. But,
Yeah.
like, hello is quoted, like, it's parodied so many times throughout, like, comedy and stuff. Just creeping people out. Like, you can't tell me that.
And see, this is where I may have to sit down and like rewatch, right? Because I have, and hopefully not a false memory of him looking through the bars saying hello, Clarice. And it goes into his evaluation, because his character was a psych doc before they catch him,
Mm-hmm.
going into her hearing the lamb scream and everything else. So um, now I'm gonna have to sit
So,
down and watch it again.
this is the Mandela effect in full effect as we speak, because you remember it that way, and I always remember it being the quote coming out that way. I remember, all it's always been um, presented that way in parodies. But what Vicky said is 100% right, because that is the point where they show him saying that line is when he calls her from somewhere else on the phone. So she remembers it that way, you remember it that way. Here's your Mandela effect.
Right.
That is the Mandela effect in a nutshell. And so I mean it's right here, and she remembers it one way, you remember it a different way, and in the grand scheme of things, you're both completely right. Like, in the old timeline, you were right, Melissa. In the current timeline, she's right.
So,
Like, I
just
don't know.
Googling on this because now I'm obsessed. Uh, there's
This is
one,
the problem with the Mandela effect: is once you start on it, you fall down the rabbit hole, and it becomes an obsession.
yeah, one listing, because what I Googled was, when does Hannibal Lecter say hello, Clarice? And one result that immediately pops up on the top is Lecter never actually says this during the entire run of The Silence of the Lambs. The closest he gets is saying "Good evening, Clarice," but for some reason that doesn't scare us nearly as much. Why do we love imagining Hannibal the cannibal saying this line?
Yeah, that's
And
nuts.
I call shenanigans. Uh,
Yeah, there's something off.
but yet, two or three little drop downs is what movie features the famous line "Hello, Clarice," and comes up Silence of the Lambs. So
Right,
um,
exactly.
it's fun.
That is like full Mandela effect right there. Because like like I said, it's one of those things that I never actually watched that movie, but like even I know it was hello and not good morning or good evening.
Yeah. So
But
yes, I have a good reason to sit down and watch it again.
so since we're talking famous lines said, let's go Star Wars, and let's talk about Luke, I am your father. That was never said. It was always, no, I am your father. But
Right.
but here's my thing with that one is in an interview, James Earl Jones, who was the voice of Darth Vader, said that when he was given the script and they said, or he's like, I read where it said, no, Luke, I am your father. He said, I called bull on that. He's like, because I was pretty sure he was lying. And I'm like, okay, so James Earl Jones remembers him saying, Luke, I am your father. And he's the one that said the freaking line. But now you watch the movie and he just says, no, I am your father. And I'm like, okay, so what's up with this one? Because there's no way the person who delivered the line could possibly misremember one of the most famous lines he ever spoke. I mean, I remember my first ever time watching it, it was Luke, I am your father. But now you watch it and it does say, no, I am your father. And I'm like, I mean, I really didn't catch that at first because I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. Like, it's not like, one of the ones that I'm going to jump into and be upset about and be like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, you guys messed this up. There's no way that that's what he really said. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I know for a fact that at one point in time it was Luke, I am your father. Because once again, another massively quoted line. On top of the fact that the actor who delivered the line said that that is exactly what he recorded. And now they're saying, no, I am your father. And I'm like, this is all craziness. And it's like, where are
Mhm.
these changes coming from? Like, how does this happen? Which of the theories about how this effect happens is the right one? I mean, of course, we got that question about a lot of things, and not the point right now. But
Yeah,
that
I
one
put a
just,
link in for YouTube on that little fight scene. I started watching it, and I
yeah,
forgot how long a drug out it is, so, if you wanna
yeah,
watch it, but, I did not get to the part for that quote, but it's in there, but it makes me want to find somebody who's got, like, a VHS tape or something from, you know, and
right, and
what did it say in the original?
right. Let's watch the VHS and see if maybe they took out the Luke in one of the, you know, when they, what is it called? They did all these re-edits as they were re-releasing the shows and stuff, and like at some point, did they just, take Luke out and leave the no in? Is that what happened? Like, because there's no way that a line that famous, just like the one with Hannibal Lecter, there's no way that a line that has been quoted that many times is false. Like none.
Um,
I mean, you won't convince me.
here's an interesting one, I did not realize, so, okay, everybody, how many states do we have?
How many states?
How many states are a part of the United States of America?
50.
Right? I learned it as 50 as well. Um, in that list, they're saying that there are people who recall being taught that there was 51 or 52. What I remember was we have 50 states, and then there was 1 to 2 properties or territories like Puerto Rico, but
Right.
they were actually states.
Yeah, they're not actual states though. So
Yeah,
that wouldn't make sense.
I don't know if I would count that one as a Mandela, maybe only because like I know it's 50, but yeah, that's in the list for the Mandela effect, that there are people who swear that they were taught, and maybe they had a bad teacher. That there's right, Karen 50 Nifty United States. We all remember that Saturday morning cartoon song. Um, but that there are people who think that there are 51 or 52.
Okay, well, I'm gonna need them to let me know what the other two states are because I
Yeah.
like. Is there more options than what we have right now as to where we can run away to? I mean, come on.
Okay, so and then two, if we want to get off movies, okay, We Are the Champions. We
Oh
can
my
all
God, yeah,
sing this song in our head, right? And they swear he never says, Freddie Mercury never says of the world at the end of the song, like as part of the song. It was added like way later, only
yeah,
during the Wembley Stadium performance.
yeah. So yeah, if you listen to the album, like the recording of it, it cuts off. It doesn't say of the world. The only time, literally, the only proof you can find that he sang of the world ever was during that one concert. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense to me because once again, it doesn't make sense because every single person in the world, and I don't think there's a single person who remembers it differently. I think this is one of the very few where you might only have 1 or 2% of people who don't remember him doing of the world at the end. Like, but their theory is that we insert of the world on our own at the end of it because it makes more sense than just cutting off at "We Are the Champions."
I mean, I just pulled it up on Apple Music and like fast forward, and Of the World is not there.
Yeah,
It's like
it's
a
not.
hard end. Like you feel like they just stopped the song in the middle because even the
That's
music,
exactly what it feels like. I mean
yeah.
that, and that's what they said. That's why they said that we put of the world at the end because it felt like they did because they felt like a hard stop. Like it shouldn't have stopped there. There should have been more. And they're like, apparently Freddie Mercury felt the same way because he added it during this concert. And I'm like, he didn't add anything. He sang it properly.
So Melanie says on Amazon Music, does it have the Of the World that's not the Wembley Stadium? And then I wonder too, did he just start adding it every other performance then? So maybe they couldn't go add it back to the disc, but were all of the other subsequent live performances, did he always just throw it in there? And that's how we all started remembering it.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I'm telling you, Apple Music does not have it, and it makes me very angry because I don't like how that stops.
Yeah, no. I mean, when I when I will only listen to the version I can find where he says of the world because when I listened to the one where he didn't say that, I'm like, absolutely not. The song's incomplete, and you wasted my time.
So for anybody who watched Big Bang Theory, you know how like they would sometimes mess with Sheldon by like doing the shape and a haircut knock, but not finishing it. It would drive him crazy, or he, you had to finish things. Like I feel like Sheldon listening to that version of We Are the Champions, like they just stop,
Oh my god,
and it just drives him up the wall.
that would bring out his inner serial killer. I'm
Yeah.
telling you.
It's quite uncomfortable listening to, I guess, the original version of the song and not having that last line because they even like
Mm,
drag that ending music how it fades out to cover Of the Worlds, but in this version it just stops,
yeah,
so there's no wind down.
no.
Karen's like, my matrix is crumbling, right? The
I
world
mean,
is different. Let's talk about it.
and that's another thing. That's exactly what's going on too. I mean, so apparent. Now, I was taught growing up that you put your right hand over your heart, which is on your left side,
Hmm.
but it's in the center. Your heart's actually dead smack center. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure mine's on the left side
Yeah.
because it doesn't make sense.
Wait,
So
wait,
it's like,
stop it. My brain hurts. Quit it. Google.
and I'm like, but it's in the center. And I'm like, okay, well, mine's on the left. I don't know where yours is, but mine's on the left.
Huh. Huh, huh,
So
huh.
it's weird. It's nuts. I'm telling you.
Right here
There's all
between the
kinds of weird.
really?
Yeah.
I always thought it was like not all the way to the left, but more like slightly.
Off center, like a little bit.
Yeah, that's some bullshit. All right,
Yeah.
now
That's
I'm
what.
gonna go into like, okay, do the MRI or whatever. Prove to me that mine's right here, right now.
Right. So, I'm looking back at the list that I sent you.
Makes sense now. Like as I look
Okay.
at
So,
other like anatomic, pictures, I'm like, well, that makes sense.
yeah.
Duh.
I mean, it makes sense, but like, it doesn't make sense because it's like, yeah, you like looking at it, it's like, okay, I mean, yeah, that's where it should be. But like, no, I was taught it was on the left. Like, even I remember like science when you had them cute little skeletons in school and they had the little organs inside them, they had the heart up in the left side,
Hmm.
not in the center. And so I'm like, you know, when did that change? Like, what? How many people have their heart in the center? Like, is all of our hearts in the center? I mean, I remember mine being on the left, but like, is it actually in the center and I just don't realize it?
So, according to Google, um, when I typed in why do people think the heart is on the left, response is I believe the heart is on the left side of the body because the heart's narrow end points left, and the left side is more powerful during contraction. The heart's bottom left chamber, the left ventricle, is also larger and stronger than the right ventricle, which pumps blood to the lungs. The left ventricle pumps oxygenated blood, blah, 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 blah. So the left side of the heart is bigger and stronger. So you feel it more. So it feels like it's more here rather than here.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Okay.
it did help, like, you had things in school showing it misplaced.
So I guess that could be just I guess I can see how that could maybe not even be a Mandela effect at all. But
Right.
I guess,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, I can see it.
and then if you want to get into the woo woo side,
Uh oh.
in traditions, the left side of the body is believed to be associated with the emotional and spiritual realms, which is why people like to place the heart there for the emotion
Yeah,
side of the body.
that's fair.
But that also is predominantly from right handed people. In a lot of the traditions, if you know you're right-handed, that's your dominant hand, that's your off-putting, your giving hand, so that makes your left hand the
Right.
receiving and motion. But that doesn't necessarily apply because you've got left-handed people that would be flipped. So it's kind
Yeah.
of one of those, and it's a little biased in that way of thinking. But what is it? I think it's like integrated energy therapy relies very heavily that your right hand is your dominant and that you pull like this. And I'm like, nah, I feel like I'm getting more done if I'm pulling with my left and I'm not left handed. But the fact that, it just feels and I can feel better what's going on. So that throws that one kind of out the window for me. Um,
Yeah.
right, Vicky? Good point. Um, which is why they say it's better for your heart to sleep on your left side if you're a side sleeper, because that's all down there, and your stronger chambers and everything are going to be pumping easier. So
Oh yeah. It's
also,
fair.
if you have gastro and hernia problems, sleeping on your left is better for you. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that
I'm
must
here to not sleep on my left side.
that must just be one of those things, and I don't necessarily think now getting more context with that that's necessarily a Mandela effect.
No, I think
But
that, yeah,
originally, I was all in for that being a Mandela effect, but now with some more context and some explanation behind it, I'm like, okay, that makes sense actually. So we're gonna let that one. We're gonna let that one go.
yeah.
um,
We are the champions. We just rewrote Freddie's song for him because we knew because he wrote that whole song. Um, Obviously, he knew he needed to finish it, and then we just carried it on. But
yeah, apparently, I guess.
like you,
So another. Oops, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, I was just saying that Freddie forgot something at the end there.
Oh, so in the late '90s, early 2000s, someone took a picture from the torch of the Statue of Liberty, saying that they were on the very last tour that the torch has ever had. However, the torch actually closed in 1916, and absolutely nobody outside of the National Park Service staff has been allowed in the torch since 1916. But I remember in school people touring the torch and always saying, if I go to the Statue of Liberty, like, I'm not going to the torch because it's way too high.
Hmm.
And I specifically remember in school in the early 2000s, people were allowed to tour that torch. But that's not true. It's been closed since 1916.
Huh.
And I'm like, okay, so then how did I see modern people, modern tour groups in the torch if it has not been open for tours since 1916?
And see, this is where now, like in this time period versus in the 80s and early 90s when we would have been going through the school, um, the ability to fake things and create realistic like pictures of people somewhere is
Yeah.
bigger now than it was back then.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Now it's super easy, but like even in the early 2000s, it wasn't that easy. When I was in elementary school, it wasn't that easy. I mean, it was possible, of course, but
mhm,
you would have had to take a lot of time, and it something like that doesn't seem worth taking the time.
right, right.
So that one just doesn't sit well with me because I know, and plus it wasn't just one like picture of one group; it was multiple different groups. Like you could tell multiple different groups of people had been up there, so like there wasn't going to be multiple faked photos of that. Like there, you might have got one or two, but I remember seeing many, many, many photos, and I remember we were talking about um, going on vacation or something, and I remember that year we did go. We went to Niagara Falls. We didn't go all the way to New York City, but I had said something to one of my teachers or something, and they said um, to make sure that I get pictures up in the torch. So like even the teachers and the grown-ups around me knew that the torch was open, but it wasn't. So it wasn't. And I'm like, okay. Like
Hmm.
that one's always been kind of weird to me when I first found that out that it closed in 1916. I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure it didn't, but I can't argue with I mean I can, but I can't argue with records. I mean, you guys got a record that says nobody's been in there since 1916. It must be true.
I'm just kind of scrolling through here, and there's one that I kind of fell victim to. What color is chartreuse?
That I don't know. I feel like it should be like it sounds like it should be some kind of purple. I don't know.
Um, I always thought it was like in a pinkish magenta color,
Okay, yeah, I was okay. I think magenta's more what I was thinking than purple, but
but apparently it is green. I have
huh?
never ever seen chartreuse as green, ever, ever, ever. Now I wish I had some old boxes of Crayola crayons to be like, see, it was this pinkish magenta color.
But that just it, chartreuse doesn't even sound like it should be a green. Like the name itself doesn't even sound like a green.
See, Chris is like, no, it's a lime green. Like, not in my world.
I was gonna say you're from two different timelines because well, I mean, and I thought it was a purple color. I mean, which purple I guess is a heck of a lot closer to magenta than green. So I mean,
Right. Um, there's a few others in this list that I'm like, no, I didn't buy into that one. I knew like Looney Tunes was TUNES. Like I remember that. Um, um, what else?
yeah, that
Always
one
knew
for sure.
that there was no double E in Febreze, that there was never a T in Skechers, and maybe because I wear Skechers a lot, so I knew there was never a T in there.
So as for Febreze, I do remember the extra E. That's the thing. I
You do?
remember the extra E. I do.
Well, for
Um,
who's Britney Spears fan? Do you remember her wearing a head microphone headset in
I
the
do.
video? You do?
I very much do. When I seen that one, I was like, no, she was wearing the headphone, the over ear headphone, because that was another situation like the Hello Clarice thing. It was such a popular costume, and anybody who mimicked that costume always had that piece. I remember a still shot of her having the microphone.
Yeah, they said her doll was even released with the doll wearing it.
Yes, the doll was released with her wearing it too. I do.
Um, I've never been a Britney fan, so I couldn't be a part of that one way or the other.
Yeah,
Um, Divine,
I do remember
hello.
that.
Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. So I'm starting to believe this is what's going on with me. Like, do you have your own Mandela effects going on in life? Um, Anytime I have anything wonky, I blame the damn fairies. They steal
Yeah,
all my shit that I lose.
see,
Uh, Melanie's like, they stopped doing tours of the torch July 30th of 1916.
there was some kind of damage to it due to some bombing or something,
Oh,
and
I
it
don't know.
became unsafe. And I'm like, yeah. So yeah, I do remember the Britney Spears one, and I'm glad that somebody was able to look that up and get me that specifics on that one.
Um,
Yeah, but and I have to say this, and I'm gonna catch hell for this, but Britney did it better. Mostly because I can't now and never could stand Madonna.
yeah, both are outside of my music preferences. I mean, I'm the one that sits listening to Bad Omens or Typo Negative while drinking coffee in the morning, getting ready for my day.
Fair
I'm
enough.
not a
Fair
Britney or
enough.
Madonna fan. Um,
So since we're on the M's, the Mona Lisa, did she smile?
she
Was she ever
smirked.
smiling?
She smirked.
I remember her not even nothing. Like she wasn't frowning, but she was kind of like indifferent. Like I really don't want to be here, so I need you to hurry the hell up with this painting. But now
Gosh,
she's smiling.
I do think, Divine, I really do think that there's some overlapping and sharing. And um, I forget which scientist. Actually, I can see his face, and I couldn't tell you what his name is because it's this long and it starts with an M. Um, Mitsusuko. I think he's an astrophysicist, but he was talking about realities and dimensions and parallel universes and how they're like
Mhm.
bubbles, and sometimes they touch and things bleed over.
Yeah,
And I'm like, that I could see that making sense, and why things just kind of like this, you know. Um,
yeah, and that's
wait.
why that's and that's kind of why I in the beginning when we were talking about the Shazam thing, that's why I said that the Sinbad we currently have is not the Sinbad from our timeline, from our dimension,
Mhm.
because our Sinbad would have been like, yeah, of course I did that movie. But in another dimension, he wouldn't have done that movie.
I remember watching that movie at Fort Campbell in my Pierce Village family house on Kelly Street, like
Right. Right.
4553B Kelly Street in Pierce Village, Fort Campbell. Remember watching it. Like, don't tell me I did not.
But then people are like, you can't argue with it anymore because now you have Sinbad saying he never did it, and I'm like, well, he's not the same Sinbad, so like, yeah, I will argue with it.
Sinbad has had some health issues, and maybe, just maybe, he has forgotten some things.
Maybe that's a fair point too. But I'm
um,
just like, um, so yeah. Anyway, so that's basically I don't. There's so much like some people are calling it timelines, like they went back in time and changed it, but like if something was changed, then the new way is how it always was, which means we wouldn't remember it being a different way.
Mm.
So it couldn't be time travel like some people say, because if they had changed it, then that's how it would always have been. But if it was dimensions merging, then okay, I can that then we're getting the effects from a different dimension. Their way is, coming to our reality. Their reality is becoming ours, and ours is becoming theirs. And there is different realities out there. I mean, there are dimensions out there, and this is what one of the guys who was explaining the Mandela effect. There are dimensions out there where the Germans won the war. There's dimensions out there where the dinosaurs weren't destroyed. There's dimensions out there with things that are seemingly insignificant to us, such as I went to McDonald's, but in this other dimension, I actually went to Burger King. And it's like, yeah, and this is what we're experiencing, more or less. Um, but in the beginning of this, before we run out of time, you did. Oh, let's go through this one first. Um,
I majored in
let's-
English, Lit, and grammar, and even as a kid, was always bothered by Stain ending the Berenstain
yes,
Bears' name.
yes. And I always thought it was this. I always thought it was Steen, not Stain. It never made sense to me.
Because the Steen, having grown up an army brat, being exposed to different languages, reminded me of German, so it made sense. The Berenstain Bears, not Berenstein Bears.
And if I
So
remember, the people who wrote the series was German,
a while
and it,
ago,
and it's actually the Bears is the author's last name that they gave to the Bears.
um, I had read up on this like down a rabbit hole like a couple of years ago, and like the parents started it, then the son took it over, and then at one point it was going to sell it, and like there's quite a history to the book series and the original humans behind the book. Because one of the
Yeah.
theories was maybe it had sold off and the name changed, and that's why we all remember the name one way versus the other. And um, but da, 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 da. Oh, I forgot Dr. Seuss's real name was Theodore Geisel. The book was inspired by
I
the
never
idea
knew that.
he shared with Dr. Seuss, who was working as an editor. Um, oh, so the authors also wrote other books, including Why All Bears Should Be Slaughtered,
Oh, okay.
a pamphlet inspired by the real life tragedy of their 3-year-old son being eaten by a bear in Yellowstone Park in 1962.
Okay, that just ruined my childhood.
Before becoming children book authors, Stan and Jan were professional cartoonists who worked together on illustrations and cover art for magazines like the Saturday Evening Post, Collier's Magazine, and McCall's.
Hmm.
Well, that's a downer. But
I
if,
I think we all could have lived without knowing that, but now that we do, we can't unknow it.
um, well, maybe they wanted to recreate
I'll
their
never
happy little family.
I'll never look at the Berenstein Bears the same way again. I can tell you that much.
I mean,
It's a good thing my obsession is no longer Berenstein Bears, but My Little Pony. So
my little. It's funny. I was never a My Little Pony. I was a He-Man. I was such a tomboy growing up.
we'll see.
Yeah.
It's not like the originals or anything. It's like it's not even a new age one, because I've caught some of the, like, the newer ones, and I'm like, it's just plain stupid. Mine is like the seasons of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. It's a TV series and it's really good, but it has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about. But but yeah, um, I forget. I had a point to make there, but like my train of thought just derailed completely.
Well, that's okay because we're
So
getting close to wrap up. Uh,
right. So before we do, since because we covered the Berenstain Bears before I got to go into the one that I found myself, and this is not one that a lot of people feel any kind of way about because they're kind of like, I don't really know. But 2004, Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, where Jim Carrey plays the main villain. You have the character of Uncle Monty. Now, in 2004, when it first came out, I specifically remember Uncle Monty was played by John Cleese. Now, a couple years ago, I was looking up the cast of the show to find a different actor. Um, there was somebody I recognized, and I'm like, what do I remember them from? So I was going in to find that person, and while I was scrolling, it showed I seen Uncle Monty, and then it said played by Billy Connolly. And I'm like, no, he was played by John Cleese. Because I specifically remember that John Cleese did play Nearly Headless Nick in the Harry Potter movies, and Uncle Monty looked a lot like that character, in a living form. But I specifically remember him looking up the cast of it back then and seeing that that is who played that character. But now he's played by Billy Connolly, and I'm like, okay, that don't make sense. Same movie. Like it's not like I went from movie to TV series. Like we're on the same movie here. That's the only actor that changed in the movie. And I'm like, so what sense does it make? It doesn't make sense to me. Like I know 100% without a single doubt in my mind it was John Cleese when that movie was released in 2004. But apparently it wasn't. So I don't know if anybody else can get on board with that, but I will take that one with me everywhere.
the Hey Samantha, have you read Leather and Lark yet? Um, so the little bit that I watched of the Lemony Snicket's movie, I didn't watch the Netflix series. Just Jim Carrey, and he did an fabulous job as what was it, Borloff, and
Olaf, yeah,
that time, that one of the first times they knock on his door and he just yells intrude, I'm like, perfect,
yeah,
perfect,
yep.
because that's what it feels like anyway. You're intruding on my peaceful home space. So mentally I always, in Jim Carrey's voice, intrude. um
Literally, like when I was listening to the book series finally, and they got to that part where the Baudelaires get to that house, and he never said intrude in the books, and I'm like, but it was perfect. It
mhm.
matched the character so well.
Yeah, Jim Carrey
But
nailed that.
but then for the TV series, Neil Patrick Harris didn't say that either because they pretty much the TV
Well,
series pretty much stuck to the books. I mean, after listening to the entire book series, having already watched the TV series, I'm like, the TV series was pretty much carbon copy the books.
mhm.
So, but Neil Patrick Harris did just as an incredible job as Jim Carrey did. But considering they play, I always say it like when you got a TV series versus a movie, different actors playing the same character. I'm like, same character, different Earth. So Jim Carrey's really did take place, but it was on a different Earth from Neil Patrick Harris's Olaf. So they would have did things differently. Like, like I'm sitting here having this conversation with you right now, whereas on a different Earth, we might not even know each other. And we would be totally different people on other Earths. So I'm like, but that actually comes into effect. That actually really is part of the Mandela effect because it's different Earths clashing with ours, and whether you call it different Earths, whether you call it different dimensions, it's all the same thing. It's all in which verbiage you decide to use. And this is what
Right.
is causing this phenomenon is we are getting a reality from a different dimension, a different Earth, and they're either we're fully getting theirs and ours is disappearing, or we're getting theirs and they're getting ours. I don't know because I'm not there, so I don't know how if it changed over there or not. I can only say that it changed here. But it is interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon all around because there's no way that so many people misremembered things. Since we still got a minute, one that really messed with my head was the evil queen. Now she said, I remember mirror mirror on the wall, but she said magic mirror on the wall. And when I seen that, I'm like, no, she didn't. Like she said mirror mirror. Apparently in the fairy tales, she said that, but it's only the Disney movie where she said magic mirror.
Hmm.
But a little further into that, the now she says magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest one of all. But I remember mirror mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all.
Yeah, that's what I remembered.
Not the fairest one of all, because I feel like that doesn't cover the true vanity of the queen.
I just put a link into it's just a short, easy kind of read. Kind of like some science behind why Mandela effect can happen. Like humans are notorious for having bad memories, how the brain
Yes.
processes the written word, and how your brain likes to make up stories and fill in what it perceives as missing facts. So,
Yeah,
um, so some
yeah.
some science maybe behind that.
And
Um,
you won't hear me argue that one little bit because we definitely do that. But in the same respect, it's like that can account for some of it, but not all of it. There's no way.
yeah,
Like that kind of science could possibly explain we are the champions because we automatically fill in that last part because it didn't feel right without it.
right,
But
right.
like the whole world remembering hello Clarice and not good morning, that that can't be explained by science because we didn't fill anything in. It completely changed.
Well, I want to go to that dimension where he does say hello, Clarice, and I want to see if the author finally wrote the book to let us know what happens to Clarice, because the last books with Hannibal, he has Clarice and takes off with her, and we never find out what happens. The books after that were his early years of why Hannibal is so messed up, but he never finishes what happens to Clarice. And it is
Don't
driven
you
through
love
the
when
wall for years. Huh?
don't you love when they do that? They leave it to your imagination. You got to figure out for yourself what happened.
Like, sir, I need you to write that book before you die. Okay. Um, George R. Martin, could you finish the literary aspect of Game of Thrones and please make it be better than what you put on TV? Because that was awful.
Yeah,
That
I know.
was
I think I
disgusting.
got through season one, and I kind of fell off. I don't even know that I got all the way through season one.
Right, Divine. They went to dinner. But he still had her. Where is she? Um, and they weren't hinting too heavy that he actually may have he had a fondness. I wouldn't say, his psyche wouldn't allow any sort of love or anything, but he had a fondness. But to what extent does that fondness reach? Was it enough to
Mhm.
not kill her and just keep her around, or did he end up killing her and, you know, literally eat her? Um, saute and season, like what's going on? Um, like what happened there. Um,
Right.
don't get my family started on Game of Thrones, right? It's so bad the way it ended. And then if you were watching House of the Dragon, that season finale did not feel like a finale. And like now I don't know if I even care enough to watch the next season. Um, But yes, and let's go to the other dimension when there was a better ending for Game of Thrones, shall we? Entertain me in a better dimension, please.
Right. Yeah, let's find that one because there's so like I've heard so much bad things, especially when it comes to Game of Thrones. They're like after certain season things just turn to crap, and I'm like, well, I didn't get through season one, so I guess it
Yeah,
really doesn't make a difference to me.
I want
I
to
want to
say
listen to books.
season 1, 2, and maybe 3. It's been a minute. They followed the books pretty darn close, but there was so much happening in the books that they started leaving out sections. And like, I want Martin to finish the story of the mother who was killed in the Red Wedding, who is now back from life with some other people. And I'm like, that's more important than that stupid Raven. Finish that. But when I tried watching Game of Thrones, Richie, because did you read or listen to those books before you started?
No.
Like, I was so confused that I was pulling up online like a Game of Thrones for dummies because I'm like, there is no way that I'm confusing that brother and sister having relations like they are. Yes, they are. Well, I need to go read a book first because
Yeah. No. Yeah, that part kind of threw me through a loop. I'm like, what kind of sick person are you to write that scene? Like, I can condone. I'm like, that made me more sick than when Daenerys' brother was killed. Like, I enjoyed that one. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, he was a bit of a douchebag.
I very much enjoyed his death, but that disturbed me a lot less than that relationship. And I'm like, ugh, that's just disgusting.
Yeah. Um,
But then you got to think about the time that it was set and the fact that they're royalty and that kind of
yeah,
stuff
it's a whole
happened a lot.
alternate universe, whole different set of rules, different universe.
I
But
mean, even even here in our history, royalty has inbred. Like in history, royalty has inbred. So because they thought that was the only way to keep the royal bloodline pure.
and that's why a lot of our past rulers had some serious health issues and deformities
Uh-huh.
because you do that too much and your genome gets a little wonky and misfires start
Right.
happening, inflammation.
Right.
Those kings and queens were not as handsome and comely looking as they were described to be.
Not even.
Divine's like, I need him to not keep making women go crazy. If Danny is going to destroy, then King's Landing to make a calculated choice and take out Ciri. I think the whole point, because her family had a history of like craziness, right? And that's what House of Dragon is supposed to kind of get into. But I do not like how she was fine, saying everything's great, then all of a sudden she wasn't. Like, that's not how that works. Like, let her go in there and just kick some ass and not make her crazy for it. So I agree that way. But I think they were trying to touch on this family history. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, those Lannisters deserved more horrid deaths than what they got. Like, that was so disgusting and disappointing. Um, of how they died. They deserved a much more horrible death than what they got for everything they ever did. Because go peace, love, and light, yay! Um, I also believe that sometimes you are the karma. Um, I am not one of those who only love and like life. Sometimes you just have to get some shit done, and you've already put up with too much.
This
Uh,
is why everybody's so lucky you don't have a freaking dragon.
but I want one.
Well, you don't need one.
I'm like, I want a toothless, and then I also want a big scary one.
I
um,
wanted to. I think. Well, I mean, toothless is just as dangerous as a big scary one in reality. But
he is. I mean, he is the most dangerous one in that whole series. But he is
I mean,
freaking adorable.
he's the most. He's the second most adorable badass in cartoons, and I say second most adorable
Yes.
because he's Toothless is only beat in adorable and badassness by Stitch.
So after we go through the dimensions where we're entertained properly by good stories and endings, then we're going to cross over into everybody gets a dragon dimension.
Yeah.
um, we're just we need to figure out how to make all of these bleed overs happen at will. So we can all have
I
fun.
believe that I think that some of us. I think that there is a time coming where some people may be able to actually do that. I
Yeah.
mean, there. It's
I,
coming. We're going to be the making that crossover reality. It's very much coming. It just needs to hurry up and get here.
I would not disagree with the theory that some forms of astral traveling are indeed that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
believe that.
that being able to walk those planes, and why not be able to go over there too. Um,
Right.
so I would not immediately disagree and poo poo that theory. How it would work, I don't know, but
It
I
doesn't
would
make
say
sense
that
to
it's
me.
a yeah, I would say it's an option and a possibility that can happen. Um, right? I'll have to throw that one around. We have Seven who does some dragon energy. Now, if she could figure out how to make one appear, that
That
would
would
be
be
freaking
fun.
awesome.
Yeah, that would be
Imagine how much gas we would all save going to work if you just rode your dragon to work.
true.
I mean, what better way to get to work? Um, or the library, or the grocery store, or the yarn store. I mean, come on now. Yes, I would take my dragon anywhere. Uh, right? Once we get that class lined out, everybody come visit. We're all gonna have a fun class, and everybody goes home with the dragon. You would only need to book a one-way ticket because on the way home you're
Right.
in.
Yeah. Uh,
um,
we are way over on our time, so
yeah, I got to get ready for a
mm,
virtual doctor appointment.
yeah.
So we haven't discussed what we're going to talk. Well, you know what? I lied. I was going to say in 2 weeks, but next week I do know there's an added little extra event that I will be live streaming. Richie, if you wanted to jump in to watch, maybe comment here and there. So, those of you who are kind of local and know, right to the bookstore. Yes. Um, two of our readers, our house readers, Stacia and Greg, will be going to let me make sure that I'm on the right week here. Yes, to the Enfield House. Now, if you guys ever watched on the Pet Channel, they had a whole like haunted series about pets and ghost interactions. The Enfield House was called the Demon House on that show, and has had some
Mm,
notorious reputation. But they are going to be going out there and starting to film a docu series. So Wednesday, Station and I will be live for a bit as she is traveling in, going in, getting her initial readings and all of that good fun stuff. And then Thursday, as Greg is being picked up from the car, we will be live with him as he's walking around and what he is getting. So, the times for all of that, keep an eye out if you're interested in watching how that goes on and being a participant to be able to ask questions possibly. Just keep an eye out because as soon as I have those times, like I know Greg's flight is on Thursday, but what time he's landing and he picks up the car and all that good fun stuff, wait and find that out.
yeah.
So next week we actually will have two paranormal lives going based on and around the Enfield House up there in Connecticut. So fun times. It'll be interesting there. And Greg knows nothing of the house, so he's not even exactly sure what all's going on. We like to keep Greg in the dark and surprise him when
Yeah.
he goes up because it's great fun to torture him that way. So. And then 2 weeks we'll be back to like our regular type of paranormal discussion. So if you guys have suggestions of things you would like to talk about, hear us talk about, do some research, and you join in, feel free to drop those in comments because we can always see those later after the fact as well, and we get notified.
Right.
Richie, did you have an idea potentially for 2 weeks from now?
Um, the last two ideas I had was Men in Black and Mandela Effect, so we covered those. So I would like to get back to talking about ghosts a little bit because we haven't talked about them for a while. But the question is the subject matter for that? Like,
Oh, thank you. Yeah. There's actually more to the shirt. There we go.
oh,
So you can only see the top part of her, but yeah.
okay, that shirt is like I of course love Maleficent and
Yeah.
the cartoony like the little kitty character was really cool. But now I'm completely in love with this shirt, seeing the entirety of it.
It's one of the few times that it's not a Nightmare Before Christmas shirt. Um, I have a handful of Maleficent and some fun ones. Like I have a Rocky Horror Picture Show
I
shirt.
love Rocky Horror.
It's the it looks like the comic book cover where he's laying there on the bed and
Mhm.
it's got the little price tag and everything on it. Um, so for once, it's not a Nightmare Before Christmas shirt. Uh, So yeah, guys, if you've got suggestions or if there is a famous case that you would like us to get a little deeper in and go find out more history, like we've done with the Devil Made Me Do It case and all of the other things. And
Yeah,
I
I
forgot
have.
the young man who actually had cancer, and they were like, "Oh, the demon was making him have anger issues," and I'm like, "No, the chemotherapy they were giving him was notorious for mood altering,
Yeah,
sensations. It wasn't a demon." Um,
yeah.
So, uh,
As for famous cases, I have a list of ones that we have yet to cover because I'm going to be researching them for my show for my my solo. But like if I got the information, we will definitely talk about it here because here is three people's opinion. On my show, it's just mine. So
right. So,
and with my show, like we just jump in and just start talking about everything. But like with my show, I sit there. Mine's more almost like a podcast where I sit and I read all of my research off, and then like at the end I give my opinion. Whereas like with me, you and Emily, we kind of just like jump around to different parts of it and to discuss it.
mhm,
So like here is a full discussion. Mine is more like a podcast.
right. And I'm sure you guys, if you're podcast listeners, there's going to be podcasts out about the Mandela effect. And I think that's what started me going down the Berenstain Bears stuff like a while ago. And, got into the history about if they were going to sell the book series, blah, 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 blah. I do not remember the podcast about their 3-year-old kid being eaten by a bear.
No, I don't remember that.
That's a rather big piece of info. I would have remembered that.
There has not.
Has there been any discussion about Gettysburg? Not yet. Not on our Paranormal
There
Live.
can be.
Yeah. I think Marianne and I maybe have touched on it once or twice in all of our years. But we haven't discussed Gettysburg in depth by itself as a main topic. So
yeah, I was gonna say we definitely can. Though.
I've never been to Gettysburg. Like it is closer to us than some of the other places I've been, which is really weird. Should make that a priority at some point to go see. And there's also, and we would have to ask Greg this because I can never remember the name of it. It's up near Sandusky. There is is it Civil War Memorial burial ground on a little bitty island. It's where they put all the dead soldiers when they came through and kind of commandeered land and everything. He says that's pretty active. And I'm like, again, here's something close that I have yet to go to.
Right.
That might be something to, at some point, to bring up and maybe go see and see what we get.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Divine said it's the only time she's seen actual spirits was at Gettysburg.
Oh, wow. Chris said you're talking about Johnson Island.
Okay.
That's good. I'm glad she knows. I'm coming.
I think we just need to make a day trip one day. Get those of us together who want to go and just go walk around, see what we get.
For sure.
It is one of those, I think, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, if you've been out there, you have to pay attention to time of day and like getting over with a boat or a ferry. So you don't want to get stranded. Hey, Lisa. Good seeing you yesterday. Okay. Well, we'll throw some Gettysburg on there and we'll see what we come up with and ideas. And if you're so inclined, catch us next week for some Enfield information and lives as Greg goes through and reads the house and Stacia goes through and reads the house of what's going on there. Why did the Animal Channel, that's not what the name of the channel, but what was it called? Was it the Animal Channel? I don't know.
Animal Planet?
There you go. Yay. Animal Planet. They called it the Demon House. So that's where
they're actually on Facebook as the Enfield Demon House.
Okay. So that is where they're going to be next.
I follow the page, so yeah. But,
all right, Divine. Right. This makes me think of 8675309.
Right.
Let's all call it. No, don't get Divine in trouble. Act like you never saw it. That was not for us. All right, guys. Thank you for joining. Catch us next week for some Enfield work, and we'll be back to our regular paranormal chat in 2 weeks. Yeah. It is the Enfield, Enfield. Woo, there we go. The words are hard. So that's the house that Stacia and Greg will be at, and we will be streaming live with them as they're going through the house. So keep an eye on the time. I am waiting to hear when people are getting their, bye Richie, their landing times and car rental pickup times and stuff. So, but thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys next week.